Hi, it's time for chapter 20 of the Titanic. First, let's think back to chapter 19. The boat is quickly filling with water. Alfie noticed that there was 4 feet of it in the mailroom, but the other employees of the Titanic don't want to panic anybody in first class, so they're kind of almost keeping it a secret. Chapter 20, RMS Titanic, Sunday, April 14th, 1912, 11:45 p.m. To Juliana in stateroom B-56, the collision had felt like a gentle scrape, merely a brief interruption in the ship's smooth progress. Moments later, there was a stir of voices in the passageway, polite questions from the first-class passengers, and reassuring replies from their stewards. "There's talk of an iceberg, miss," Junior Steward Trihorn told Juliana. "I'm sure they'll get it sorted out soon enough." Most went back to bed, but a few intrepid souls wrapped themselves in overcoats and ventured out to see if they could catch a glimpse of this Atlantic novelty. By the time Juliana made it up to the A-deck promenade, there was no berg to be seen. But looking down, she could tell that the well deck and forecastle were littered with ice fragments. A few young, tuxedo-clad first-class men had organized an impromptu football match with the larger chunks of ice and were creating quite an uproar in their mirth. The scene reminded her of stories that she had heard of Papa in his youth, mindless, impulsive, devoted to fun. So little had changed except that the money had run out. It was as she returned to her suite that she encountered Alfie, drenched and disheveled. His appearance was the first sign for Juliana that all might not be well aboard the Titanic. "Alfie, why are you wet?" "I'm not supposed to alarm the passengers," he babbled. "I've been ordered to change my clothes." "Does this have anything to do with the iceberg?" "We're damaged, Miss Julie, badly, I fear." "But it was only a little bump." "Up here, maybe," Alfie said urgently. "I've been to see my da in the boiler rooms. They're pumping like mad, but the water's still rising. Up to G-deck in the mailroom." Juliana went suddenly white. "Where's Patty right now?" "The master-at-arms office, E-deck. If water can reach G, it can go up to E." Alfie nodded. "But if there was any sign of water in the brig, I'm sure they'd move the prisoners." Their eyes met. In that kind of emergency, would the Titanic's crew have time to worry about prisoners? Or even remember the hapless souls locked in the cells, unable to move to a higher place? "We have to see if everything is all right down there," Juliana insisted. "I'm supposed to attend to my passengers," Alfie began. "I'm one of your passengers," she insisted. "I'm going to check on Patty." For 5 days, an army of crew members had broken their necks to cater to Sophie's every whim. Now, with the killer on the loose, she couldn't find anyone to pay attention to her. There was an abundance of crew, all of them hurrying somewhere, most of them ignoring her. A few of the kinder ones promised to seek her out and speak with her. "But there's a murderer on board," she protested, when Third Officer Pittman brushed her off like so many others had. He turned and regarded her in astonishment. "My dear young lady, it was an iceberg." And he, too, rushed away. Members of the Black Gang, soaked and even grimier than usual, kept climbing up from the depths of the ship, seeking out officers. High above, the mighty smokestacks began to blast their mournful foghorn calls. It wasn't so loud on Scotland Road, but on deck it must have been ear-splitting. "Why are we blowing that horn?" she asked. "Is there another ship too close to us?" "Just letting off steam, miss," one of the stokers called. "Pressure got too high with the engines stopped." As she turned away, she collided with a steerage passenger who was sprinting at top speed along the passageway. "Sorry, miss." He helped her up, and Sophie realized that she recognized the young man. In fact, she had danced with him at the third-class party the night before. "Where are you going in such a rush?" Aidan Rankin regarded her as if she were feeble-minded. "Didn't you feel it? One of the boilers must have exploded." "We struck an iceberg," Sophie explained. "I noticed it too. It was just a little scrape." "Little scrape? Threw me right out of my berth, it did, knocked me silly. And when I came to myself, there was water on the deck. I think we're sinking." "The Titanic is unsinkable," she tried to soothe. "I've got to find Ma and my brothers." And off he ran down Scotland Road. A creeping unease began to take hold of Sophie, a gnawing sense that there might more. Oh, little mistake here. That should have the word "be" in there. That there might be more peril hanging over her than the danger posed by Jack the Ripper. She decided to head back to first class and her mother. Amelia Bronson was no sailor, but she always took charge in crisis. Sophie rushed to the nearest staircase, took one step, and froze. Something was not right. It was almost as if the step had been moved, tilted ever so slightly forward. Yet that was impossible. The staircase was a fixed unit, and it looked completely level. Still, there was an odd sensation. Had the stressful events of this night affected her mind? It had to be. Why, the only way this stair could be skewed would be if the entire ship. Sophie! Juliana appeared at the landing, scampering down from the upper decks, Alfie hot on her heels. Is it just me, or is the angle of these steps wrong? Sophie asked them. The bow was filling up with water, Alfie supplied breathlessly, near to my waist in the boiler rooms, and entirely flooded forward of there. Have you seen Patty? Juliana asked. Patty? He's in the brig, isn't he? We have to make sure he's moved somewhere safe, Alfie panted. But, Sophie protested, but the ship can't sink. That won't help if the water's over his head and he's locked in, Juliana argued. Sophie took in the sight of Alfie's drenched uniform. There's no water around here. I've seen wet people, but they all came up from below. Alfie put his finger to his lips for silence. The three listened carefully. They could hear the distant roar of the smokestacks and the hubbub of conversation from Scotland Road, but there was another sound, quieter but steady, almost like a draining culvert during a rainstorm. He led the girls forward. The passageway jogged to starboard around what Alfie knew to be the number 2 hatch. Soon they were passing through sailors' quarters, all deserted. At this point, the full complement of crew had been called to duty by this emergency situation, which was what? To man the pumps? What other duties might be required on an unsinkable ship? The sound was louder now, more like a rushing river. They had reached the spiral staircase. Alfie looked down. The water sloshed around the cast iron step just a few feet below them. My God, 15 minutes ago, it was still on the orlop deck. It's rising quickly, Juliana quavered. We must find the master at arms and convince him to move Patty. Not yet, Alfie continued forward. Bulkheads began to curve inward as the ship's architecture narrowed near the forepeak. The passageway ended at a heavy steel hatch. A sign declared this to be the quarters of the Titanic's lamp trimmers. He banged against it with his fist. Hello, is anybody there? No reply. Instead, a deep groaning sound came from the other side of the bulkhead. Definitely not human. Alfie twisted the wheel that operated the door. There was a little resistance until it clicked. Then he pushed. The hatch wouldn't budge. The girls joined him, lending their slender shoulders to the task. It was as if some great weight were in the trimmer's quarters, holding the door fast. At last, the steel hatch swung inward, and a torrent of water exploded from the other side.